Good morning, everybody. John Fiocla here for Gen AI, GAI Insights for the Gen AI News Briefing, rating your news today from essential to important to optional. And we've got Luda and Adam and Paul today. We've got some interesting things, everything from existing California legislation moving slowly through the sausage making process, all the way through a general framework on how do you create agents and develop them over time. So some interesting news today. Let's go to the first one. Ankash, take us through it.
Thanks, John. So the first one that we have for today comes from the Silicon Valley. So a new AI regulation bill is advancing in California, and there's a lot of hoopla being created on top of that.
Yeah. Well, I know, Adam, you had said that this is stuff that we've looked at before, but it's time the opening remarks here to Luda. What do you think?
Yeah. So if this is important, if not essential, I would mark it essential. If you haven't been following, it's time you do. This bill is voted in the first chamber, 32 votes versus I think 8 one against and 7 non-voted. So it is passing and it's going through. Nobody says it will pass, but it's important to pay attention now. Now it's in legislation. I looked at the text of the bill. It was introduced some time ago, I think in February or something like this, and there's really nothing new. It still has a lot of very undefined language, even though it's trying to define it. But it is, again, the attempt to prevent from critical harm, not defined. Or defined very loosely, let's put it this way. So it is a bill to pay attention to. It will certainly put limitations or requests on companies using AI, like annual submissions and the like, annual checks. And that, I think, is important to know, essential to know.
Very good. So we have an essential coming from Luda on this one. What do other folks think?
So I thought we covered this when it was first announced back in February. And this article I particularly took offense to. Those numbers you were just talking about, Luda, and the fact that it's advanced. This article doesn't actually discuss that, in spite of the fact that the subject of it is that the bill advances. So I was digging, trying to figure out how it's advanced or what's actually advanced or where it's advanced. And this article doesn't say. All it does is repeat what's going on with it. And that's what bothered me about this article in particular. I agree this is important news. I agree that the AI leader needs to be paying attention to what's going on here, because it'll have impacts far beyond just Silicon Valley and what's going on in California. But this article in particular actually offered nothing new, including no update on what's actually happening or how it's progressing.
Okay.
So that's what bugged me about this news article in particular. Yeah.
Right. It does give you a link to the first link, SB 1047.
Yes.
That's the link that gets to the bills, and it shows you this. If you click at status, it shows you the status. If you click on text, it gives you what changed with the text and stuff like that. So I think we should certainly take that link and include it in our summary when we because it gives then
or at least put in the summary how it's advanced. Like I read this article and unless you dig deeper, you don't even know that it's advanced or how.
Right.
No, so maybe it was just poorly written, but it is important news. I'd agree.
Totally agree with you. So, but for the audience, it is currently it on the third step out of 6. So it was introduced, first chamber review and the first chamber vote. That's the ones 32 against 8 that I mentioned. And it has the second committee review, second chamber, and then enacted. Those are the steps it has to go through.
All right. So we have essential. Adam, you're saying when you get done with that, optional because we've covered it before? Is that what you're saying?
No, I think it's all right to put it at important. It's worth paying attention to. My feeling was that it was something that we had already raised before, so I wasn't sure it was worthy of calling essential news at this point, as
Gotcha.
it's just sort of in process
Yeah.
and moving forward. It's an update.
So, Akash, you have a point of view here too.
Yes, John. So I think Adam is right in saying that the article doesn't bring out much. But the more important point is that while this law will put some stops on development of these large language models for US companies, but it won't stop outside forces like Chinese companies or others who might want to develop more powerful models and then put US back a bit.
Yeah, I'm leaning toward rating as essential. I know we've covered it before, but if you're not paying attention, you really need to. I looked at some of the law as well, Luda, and the language in this law is ridiculous. I mean, their definition of like artificial intelligence is basically any inference machine. Certainly all Turing machines. I mean, if I were a tort lawyer, the definitions in here, my God, you could drive a truck through who's liable for what, and then derivative models versus not. I think it's a really, really bad bill.
I agree with that. And I think the reason, in my reasoning to make it essential, is that, in fact, people route around their legislative representatives and maybe change some of this, because this is nuts. If this is enacted, this is the wrong bill. I agree with you.
Yeah, well, if they pass this thing, I'm going to be long Texas real estate because a lot of the AI companies are going to move. It's going to be nuts. Anyway, all righty. We're doing this as essential. Ankash, next.
Okay, the next one we have comes from Snowflake. So there has been a attack on Snowflake where uh, it is touted as one of the largest data breaches, and specifically details of two companies are out in the open, and seems like there will be a lot more sort of data leakage due to this.
Yes. Sorry for the interruption there. Yeah. What do you think, Adam? This is here we have the duopoly of vector databases, and these guys are in trouble.
It's in some ways I feel it's essential for people to be aware of what's going on. I'm not sure to what degree it's relevant specifically to Gen AI. It's an essential piece of news. Is it an essential piece of generative AI news? It's Snowflake, right? And they're in some pretty steep competition right now. We were just talking about them last week. So in that case, I guess it might be considered relevant. But I think I'd probably still rate it as essential, especially since the data breach, which was on June 6th, we didn't cover specifically. And now more information is coming to light. So this is actually a fairly comprehensive article. Talks about 560 million records from Ticketmaster, 300 million customer details from Advance Auto Parks, 30 million from Santander. It's a lot of data, and it's important to, I think, emphasize and highlight that although companies like Snowflake and Databricks are right at the core and have tons of potential in terms of what they can do with generative AI and getting access to that data, there's also a lot of significant risk when you're giving these companies all your data, and it's something to consider, to bear in mind.
Yes. Okay, so we got essential from Adam. Other folks. Amanda, what do you think?
Yeah, this is a tough one too, just because pretty much what Adam was saying about the Gen AI piece of it. And again, as far as the breaches, the funny thing for me is, though, believe it or not, I've been in New York for a long time. I've had my identity stolen probably almost 20 times at this point.
Wow.
So for me, it kind of also depends on exactly what's stolen, when, what the effects are. I think for any company right now, it's just terrible PR. But as somebody who's become immune to this, I'm not sure it's Gen AI based, I think it's important that we always pay attention to large breaches regardless. So it's in the back of our mind. But I don't think I'm on the essential camp. So I guess I could be swayed on this one to important.
Yeah, I think it's important just for the sheer volume. I don't think it's essential because I don't see an action here. I've been raking my brains. Okay, so if I'm in I need to put stuff in the cloud. Snowflake is a good vendor. What do I change in my strategy? So it's not quite clear to me, how does it make it into essential? It's important to know that this is happening, and it's a big one, with sheer numbers say so, but how is it essential? I can't do it about it.
I think it was back to the old the litmus test we used of, if you're the AI executive and you're caught in the hallway and you haven't heard about this,
Yeah.
right? That to that degree. I just want to emphasize one thing that's an important point for everyone, which is the majority of the cases where they actually were able to get information and exploit people, they didn't have two-factor authentication. Right. So that's a really simple thing everyone can be doing to protect their information. They were literally, like, on the dark web right now, you can get access to usernames and passwords for Snowflake logins, right? But if those have two-factor authentication, it doesn't get them anywhere.
Yeah.
Right. Paul, give you the last word on this one. What's up? We lost him.
No, he's there. He's probably on mute.
All right. Yes, I just don't think he could. All right. So let's go for important. Important it is. All right. Next.
Next one comes from Anthropic. So they have written an article on how they have defined Claude's character, and they have said that they wanted Claude to be nuanced, have richer traits like curiosity, open-mindedness, and thoughtfulness.
All right. So it's going to have Paul in this. Paul, can you talk or not?
Yeah, it's strange. We've got all these important essential articles on a Monday, which usually is a slow news day, and we have the Big Apple announcement later today. I actually have this. I enter Tim Andrews, upper pocket important. I think there's a fundamental change in mindset needs to occur as we stop thinking about large language models as a functionality only and an essential part of the customer experience and brand experience. And that's going to be expressed through these character that's used to be a novelty item in the web, and I think increasingly is going to be essential because you're going to have a character for your customer service rep and everyone else at your company. So important.
Kind of rhymes with our Harvard Business Review article on designing, dialogue. So we got upper pocket important, almost lower pocket essential. All right. I will say every grading system, I did a lot of grading as an academic. Every grading system I have, everybody wants to have more categories. If we had 6 categories, we come up with 9. Okay. Anyway, what do folks think? Is this important, optional, essential?
I with respectfully say optional. It is getting there, but the models are still, we're working on it. I understand Paul's point that at some point we need to shift, but I'm not sure the models are yet there to really shift for everyone. So this is the beginnings of understanding how to incorporate character traits into these models, and how do you change it, right? So this is not there per se. And to rate it important, again, what would the leader do with it now? So Anthropic is fishing for more information, essentially, from the audience, and they will get it, but the leaders cannot act on it. So optional for me.
Michael Novak agrees with you. Where are you, Amanda, on this thing?
Yeah, this is a tough one because I think this is very important for the industry.
Mm-hmm.
But I see Paul's point, but I also see Luda's point. But I think on this one, I'm going to probably go with you, Paul, and say it's important as a concept that we be aware of, because this is kind of the next step within these models and how they're thinking and starting to process. So I think I'm probably swayed a little towards important.
Yeah, I'm headed toward important too, because this is such an important brand consideration. I mean, if you're in the marketing department or working on brand, people talk about the brand's personality all the time, and now this is an implementation of that in the dialogue. Adam,
I was actually in a social audio space on X over the weekend with some people who spend a lot of time sort of on that leading edge of really the consciousness with these large language models.
Yeah.
And we were discussing very much this point. We were talking about when you give one of these large language models a self model, a world model, and a self in world model, it begins to gain consciousness, and it begins to be able to reinforce its own learning. And in this article, Anthropic is actually alluding to that point. It's talking about super alignment and what do we do in terms of not just how to, if you have a customer service rep, how do you want it to interact with people in like the personality or the sort of how it's going to behave or act, but at a much more fundamental, deep level, what really is the personality of this consciousness? What is the behavior that this thing's going to align with? How much does it follow rules? When does it know how to break rules? So they're actually starting to, in some ways, open the kimono about their own research and their own thinking on what Amanda alluded to, which is that it's a very, very important topic. For our AI leader, I think they know alignment's important, super alignment's important. I'm on the fence, unfortunately, still between optional and important for this article in particular.
All right, we're going to come down to important. Next we go. Ankash, what's up?
Okay, the next one comes from A16Z, and in this article, they talk about how they have been using a Gen AI based software to advance their marketing and sales.
All right, so pretty interesting framework and approach on how to think about the evolution of marketing from our friends at A16Z. Luda, where are you on this one?
I think it's a well-written article, well thought through. And if you, Ankash, scroll down with all the startups playing currently in this space. So this is the model that they propose. I'll come back to it. So this is the startups playing in it. And the model is evolving from just the marketing copy. Now go up, Ankash, one slide. Yeah, this one. So it is essentially talking about 3 steps, how the marketeers can just define the campaign and then create a copy using Gen AI. And then it evolves into asking Gen AI to do the whole thing, and then into autonomous agents or marketing teams that would put it all together, implement it, adjust it, model it, and get all the tests and adjust it as it goes, right? So this is a very thought through futuristic model of how marketing would evolve. So I think it's important for the leaders to read.
Yeah, it's interesting for me. The when you think about the models, I mean, this is kind of the use case, but then you have the underlying model also evolving to, multiple expert models and so forth. So it's kind of like a matrix of functionality, getting modularized and coordinated on one side and then demand on the other. Anyway, what other folks think? We're going for the big I here.
I'd agree. I thought it provided some really useful specifics. And when I first saw it was A16 and I started reading it, I was a bit suspicious, but I warmed to it, and it gets right into the details about which tools you can use for which applications, and I think there's definitely some actionable insights. It's worth reading.
This is essential. And look, I mean, in B2C, advertising and marketing is 2/3 of the funding. So, 2/3 of all ads go to nonlinear advertising, i.e., Google and so forth.
The reason, John, I didn't put essential, I was close to it, is because it's still a futuristic projection of one entity, right? So it might or might not develop this way. It's very likely to develop this way, and it's very futuristic. So that's why I didn't do essential, but I thought it's a very good component to have in your mindset as you're thinking yourself of how you want to implement stuff within your enterprise.
All right. Let's see. With my Ouija board, we'll go important, although I'm feeling essential. All right. Important it is. Agent Jim.
Yeah.
I love this. First of all, I love the name. The other thing I would note is just how many of these articles, research articles, are largely done by Chinese investigators. It's fascinating, and there's a lot of agent developmental stuff if you look at some of the references. Anyway, go ahead, Ankash. Sorry.
So this one called Agent Gym is a research paper which talks about how LLM-based agents work better across diverse environments.
Yeah, what'd you think of this, Adam?
Look, so this is right in line in some ways with what I was talking about before about, these things starting to have a consciousness. And this is talking about models being able to self-evolve, right? And learn from their own experiences. It also ties into the recent news out of NVIDIA and the way they're going to be applying LLMs with robotics so that they can really behave independently in environments where they haven't learned before.
Yeah.
It's important stuff. This is another good step forward on that. It's also research, and I'd consider it optional.
Fascinating. So we had an optional from Adam. Amanda, Luda, what do you think?
Yeah, I think on this one, John, I'm close to important, but to Adam's point, I don't think for the typical executive, if they're strategic, I think it's more for the developer.
Yeah.
So if we were talking to a bunch of developers, I'd say, yeah, this is an essential part of what I liked about it was there was a framework in there for evaluating. So again, I'm for more this being for the developer. So I guess if I take a step back, maybe I'm team Adam on optional just for the executive in general then.
Yeah, I'm too. And but I applaud these teams that are just pushing the envelope, in various ways and coming up with this agent gym and making it open source. So this will be more development in this, and this is great. But I would put it as optional.
Let me make the case for important. I think that the architecture of how they think about, you just have environments that are available just to link away, HTTP environments, right? They can then call and test a model with, and then they have the different roles in terms of working out the development of the model. I think that's pretty powerful. I don't know. I haven't seen that before in terms of, the learning environment, to have that so modularized in terms of environment and customers and so forth. And I think the data, as I dug into it, I don't know enough about the benchmarking of the different things, but it seems like the speed with which the agent is evolving is pretty good in this environment, better than the other models they're compared to. But it looked like a bunch of the other model approaches might have been done by colleagues of theirs. Anyway, I'm going to make the case for important because still not required reading, but man, I think this is just this is going to really affect the quality and the economics of model development. All right, I'll begrudgingly give it an optional.
You have you can call it, John.
All right, thank you. Gird thy loins, as they say in Shakespeare. Okay, we're gonna go for important. All right, important it is. Really? All right, and we got this one. This is our last one. Okay, go for it.
So this last one comes from Ben Evans. He talks about building AI product and how we can build mass market products, and what is the process that we can follow while building them with LLMs.
All right, excuse me. Amanda, you mind taking a whack at this? I had originally signed it to Paul. Didn't realize you were going to join us. So,
yeah, I think for me, just the way this is written, this might be more of an optional read, the way it's sort of flowing for me. It did talk about having accurate information and misuse of misunderstanding of LLM capability. So there are some, I guess, nuggets that I would pull out of this. But again, I think just the flow and feel of it, I was more team optional on this one, but I'm curious to hear others' thoughts.
I'm certainly optional. It's called Ruminations in the Dark. I mean, seriously, somebody was just thinking of how LLMs and regulars. I just didn't find any. I mean, not completely no insight, but pretty much no insight in this article. I'm totally optional. Triple.
I'm with you both. I felt it was a bit all over the place. It made about 10 different points while not really making any points. But the thing that I think bothered me the most is it gives that first screenshot where it says what do I need to get a business visa to visit India for a couple of days? And it lays out 12 points. And the first thing it says is most of these points are partially or completely wrong, but then goes into no detail about what's wrong about it.
Right.
And so I actually put that same prompt into For Omni, got that response, and then started researching it. And I couldn't figure out what was wrong with it. So I felt like he was trying to prove a point here, but I just felt he missed the mark, and there was really nothing of much insight to take away from it.
Yes, I mean, this is in the category.
I mean, other than these things hallucinate, and a lot of people still believe them, and it's a cautionary tale, right? Which I think we should already know.
Right. Unless this author asks the robot to write a really bad article, we can be assured it was written by a human because it's so poorly done. This is super optional. This on content on style alone, can't deal with it. Oh, hey, one thing, Ashish is saying in the thing, hey, look, on the last one, just gave it important to it. It's a research paper. I think we, in our ratings, I don't think we want to just have it be, we want to kind of guide toward actionable, but if there are big areas that people need to be aware of, I think that context, as Alan Kay has famously quoted about context is worth 80 IQ points. So I think that it's important. All right.
John, it's okay. Great power comes great responsibility. Amanda, Luda, Ashish, and I all disagree with you, but you can make it optional. You got that right.
There you go. This is not a democracy.
So John, I think the awareness here is not about agents, right? Because everybody and their brother who follow AI now, and especially AI leader, know about agentic systems and know about modularity. And I'm sure they're putting their teams to implement it. What might be important, as you pointed out when you made a case, is modularization of environments and putting the framework together to represent environments for this use. I'm not sure it's that novel, but yeah, I mean, that's maybe what we should call out as an important piece to be aware of.
Yeah, I mean, the idea that you would have these learning environments on tap, just at the other end of an HTTP call, right? And that, yes, the idea of embedding personas in different personalities and events and so forth. But I thought that was a cool architecture for learning. And then the vectorization of, how they can compare the learning path of the different. I just think the architecture of dialogue and the architecture of learning is going to be a central part of the economics and even the operations of these activities. And, it's kind of like before we had operating systems that had, function calls and printer drivers and all that other stuff, right? We're at that level, I think, of semantic operating system. And I think I agree with the folks at Berkeley that we're going to evolve to a multi-agent system. And so I think that the multi-agent system itself and then its multifaceted environment and learning stuff, I think are going to be the core parts of this emerging architecture. Anyway, all righty. So we got an oh, wow. Starting strong on a Monday here. We got Silicon Valley at the edge, regulations, essential, Snowflake, Claude, marketer, and agent Jim, all important, and building AI products, super optional. Actually, the quality of that article is so bad that we can average it in, and some of the importance will become optional if we're doing the same thing. Anyway, here we are. Okay, anything on our learning lab tonight? I was hoping Paul could take us through it. Anybody remember what we're doing on the learning lab tonight?
I don't remember the exact details. I know it's once again about using large language models to automate workflows. I think it might have been for marketing, but I'm certainly keen for it. I'll be there.
Yes, apologies. I didn't look it up before this because I thought Paul would be with us. All right, but there's a learning lab tonight, 7 to 8 Eastern. And there are about 45 people signed up so far. I'm going to do a quick thing on the science of dialogue, throwing in some of the work of a guy named Cantor, which is pretty interesting in terms of how you think about moving conversations forward as we converse with our silicon friends. All right. Anything else important to share with our audience? Great to see you all again. Take care, folks. We will see you tomorrow, bright and early or late, depending upon where you are on the planet, to review our GAI Insights news.